Hello. We welcome our Facebook viewers and website viewers, and we would like you to be part of the conversation. Please feel free at any point to just drop a question in the chat and we can direct it to one of our panelists. I think we'll have a really robust conversation. So to tell you a little bit about Sweat being one of the movies on our bill, representing Poland. Magnus himself is from Sweden, but based in Poland. And Sweat is about a social media influencer and who is a fitness instructor and 3 days in her life. And without giving more away, we'll have a discussion about it and how the social media affects society and how, sorry, that's my alarm. Sorry about that. How social media affects society. And that's the discussion we want to have today. We're very excited. So Magnus, I'll start with you. My question to you is if you can tell us what made you want to write the story. What happened on social media that made you want to tell the story?
Well, I was spending a lot of time on social media after I made my first feature film, trying to basically come up with another idea for another film. And I was not looking for ideas on social media, but I was struggling with coming up with an idea. So I was wasting a lot of time on social media. But that's what somehow started interesting me more than trying to find some noble and amazingly deep idea for a new feature film. And I was watching influencers or fitness motivators a lot, and it's the first time when I came across this kind of like phenomenon on Snapchat at the time. And I somehow couldn't stop watching. It was like a reality show. I was hooked, and I came back, and I felt it was very like kind of a fresh take on the reality show. And at first I called them narcissistic. I felt they were shallow. I was judgmental. I was provoked. But the more I couldn't stop watching, the more I started kind of looking back into myself and wondering why I am reacting like this to these people who seem very happy. And why their happiness and their colorfulness and dynamic behavior, spontaneous posts, even like irritate me. And it was more of a bit of therapy for myself, realizing, or like wanting to find maybe the fitness influencer in myself, wanting to create a character where I meet, what do we have in common? Basically started to interest me. And where do our emotions kind of meet? What's universal to both of us, and so on. I felt like saying that interested me a lot, that I called them narcissistic in the beginning, and then I realized that I'm quite much of an observer on social media, and for me to make a post, I need to spend maybe a whole day of thinking it through, wondering how will I reflect in the light of this post. And maybe that's more narcissistic than actually being able to just share without thinking too much about it, and being much more spontaneous. So I felt some kind of jealousy developing, that maybe it's something my lacks are manifested in the influencers. Okay, I won't speak more now.
No, that's a really great space to find the influence for a movie. Who would have thought while you're just flipping on Facebook or Snapchat to have found such a idea for such a great film. I wanted to ask you, Khosi, there are two camps in social media: people who absolutely love it, and then people who hate it. What is it about social media that makes us hate it?
I guess some of it is what Magnus has already alluded to, the sense that they are showy, the sense that the boundary between the private self, the personal self, and the public self gets blurred on social media. We have a sense in societies about what belongs where in our lives, what issues can we air in public, and what things should remain private, and maybe share it with the people that are in our immediate space. But of course, we know that with social media, it takes one button, you press it, and literally everything is out there in the world, way beyond. It travels further than you can ever be in the world. And so we are able to put ourselves in spaces where we physically aren't. And we are able to then intrude on people's lives in a manner that physical boundaries, protect us from. So I think that's the idea that there is an intrusiveness. There's a kind of stalking, which is the other idea behind this. There's a kind of stalking in social media, in the sense that, people encroach on your life. They show you what they're doing. Who cares what toothpaste you're using? Who cares what you're eating? But there's that, and Magnus was also talking about that, the sense that things can be so mundane. It'd be like, can't you just get on with your life without needing to show? So there's always these, look at me, needing attention from people. Why can't you just get on with your life? I think that's the push factor, that's the aversion factor of social media.
I have to say something, like, just to cut in, because I really like that, because that's exactly what I think is so interesting, is maybe not the influencer themselves, maybe, but our reactions to them. What you say is like, there's a place for such feelings should not be made public, or this should not be shown to everyone. And this is also so interesting because it's almost kind of like a codex we have. And it's interesting when that codex is being broken, and
exactly.
how we react to it. And I felt with just like it's the audience kind of relationship to the main character in my film is more interesting maybe than even the main character herself. It's the whole, like, maybe how we look at the main character in the beginning and at the end. And have we been able to somehow grasp a human inside, or are we still kind of pushing away from wanting to be cynical, wanting to hate on this phenomenon, or can we love something that in the beginning annoys us?
Yeah, and I think it's a very important point that you're also making, Magnus, because the other side of it also is the fact that they, in some ways, show us parts of ourselves that we would not like to confront. Right, so they put it out there. The fact that, for example, she is lonely, and perhaps society says, no, don't show your weakness. Vulnerability is not acceptable. And again, go find a therapist and have a small little room where you can talk about that kind of stuff. But don't put it out there in the public. You have your group, your little tribe of people that you can share that with. But when you put it out there in the public, I guess there's a sense in which people are able to identify with that. It is the story of us, because what it does is that it shows us, the breadth of humanity, the good, the bad, the ugly, the sad, all those facets of ourselves that we sometimes don't want to look at, or don't want to confront and deal with issues that are sitting in those dark spaces. We'd rather keep away and kind of live in the good part. And I think that's part of the dilemma of being that sort of person, in that, she's trying to be real, and she's saying, there is actually a person who, like many others, also feels lonely, would love to have this, doesn't, and has emotions. So I'm not always just this outgoing, exuberant person. There's also a side of me that hurts. There's tears of pain, not just tears of laughter and joy and exuberance from the exercise and being inspired by what people do, and how you inspire people to find parts of themselves that they never thought were possible.
And on that note, so that's what that kicks off the movie. She makes this post, which is incredibly personal, and even her publicist is not so sure whether or not she should have done it. And that leads to a series of events where she attracts a stalker. And she has a very complex relationship with that stalker through social media. Magnus, can you tell us about that relationship?
Well, on one level, it's a stalker, a guy who feels connected to her on an emotional level, because she says in a post that she's feeling very lonely, and she would just like someone to hug her and say that everything is going to be right. And he connects to that feeling because he feels exactly the same. It's just that he's very different physically, gender-wise than her. So when he says it, it's very different than when she says it. But basically they say the same thing. But what I liked about the idea of a stalker was that through this viral post that she makes, where she kind of digs into her private feelings, she also starts digging into a kind of a shadow of herself, to a shadow character. And I think like her nightmare is like admitting that deep inside she's a fat man masturbating in his car, and that's part of her, and that's her shadow. And I mean, without getting too kind of intellectual about it, it's something that she needs to confront in herself to maybe be more okay with her deep feelings. So I think that, but of course in the beginning it was much more intuitional, much more like intuitive than that. It was based on a stalker that the singer Björk had in the 90s, who was, his name was Ricardo Lopez, I think. And he was planning to kill Björk. And he was recording himself for hours with a video camera, which you can watch it all online on certain, like it's available. And it leads up to his suicide. It's horrible things, but you get very close to him, and he records about 24 hours of his very twisted universe, his life. He's like he posts like what he records then is almost like an influencer posting today, except he was just alone in an apartment. But it gave an amazing kind of insight into his life, which I feel I get some kind of similarity today with certain influencers that let me see so much of their lives. And, you know, posting for them must be an addiction in a way of sharing, of knowing that they make enough posts. And it's a spiral. I mean, it can go in many different directions. I wanted to focus maybe on something that ends up being positive, because we're fed so many cynical and negative images of social media. So I felt somehow we don't need another influencer dying from a stalker as a result of social media.
Right. It's a very lovely narrative, and I hope for those of you who haven't seen it will absolutely see it. It's really touching. Khosi, how is it that these social media influencers who have thousands and thousands of followers can be so lonely and have such a desperate shadow self, as Magnus referred to?
I guess they, in many ways, are like many of us. And some people are not necessarily on social media, but we hear this story every so often of people that seemingly have it all on the outside, and they're admired by so many. They may not necessarily have an official following like she has, but they are looked up on by many people, and yet internally their internal landscape doesn't mirror what the outside world sees and admires about them. For many reasons, it may have been a history of unresolved issues, a history of pain that they have experienced, a history of a whole lot of things that have kind of, they have used the front as a defense mechanism for the inner world, the inner turmoil that they're experiencing. And therefore, so that to avoid going on the inside, they show on the outside a certain, and which may be equally true of them. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that this is a fake self and a real self, but I'm saying there's these two facets to them. But we see them live out a lot more on the outside, the beautiful, perfect world that many of us strive for and wish for and dream of and even think is beyond us to reach. And what I love about what Sylvia does in her character is that she not only shows what is possible, but she makes it accessible in the sense that on the one hand, she's there on the floor. You see her working out, right? But what she also does is that she inspires those that didn't believe it was possible for them to be able to do so. So there's a connection in the sense that she connects with herself, she connects with people. And yet there's parts of herself that are that she is struggling with, right? And there's a private world that she also struggles with, and which is the story of all of us in one sense or another.
Exactly. I just want to comment on that because I think it's so important what you say, in the sense that it's timeless and it's a struggle we all have. And I think it's so interesting that, but when we put it, look at an influencer or social media, somehow all this behavior, like what you say, what's real and what's fake, and it does, like the online world doesn't necessarily need to be a fake world. It can be a part of our world. It can, just like our shadow or our inner world that we are somehow maybe reflecting differently outside. It doesn't necessarily need to be true and fake. It's part of us. We live like this. It's like
Absolutely.
We all have it, and we all act in similar ways. But when it is used with an influencer on social media, it often gets very much a conversation about this is fake, she is fake, here, what's her true self, and it becomes very, very judgmental conversation when we are really discussing kind of sides of ourselves which we all have. And just like what you were saying, which I think is really important, and because the social media glasses kind of demonize to a very big extent, and I think it's very problematic, because I also look at Sylvia as a slightly more extreme version of myself in many ways. But the cinema and storytelling loves the extremer version because that makes it easier to discuss ourselves.
Right. Yeah. But in terms of Sylvia and representing herself, she represents herself on social media as this very glamorous, could I say, very put together woman on social media. And then we meet her family, and they live in a very small house, and it's very crowded in perhaps a poorer part of town. So is Sylvia giving a true representation of who she is and where she comes from? Because that's not represented on her social media or alluded to in her social media. Is she being authentic, or is she just giving a version of herself that she wishes the public to see?
Well, I guess, yeah, in that case, of course, but I think she's so nervous about going to see her mother that's something she wouldn't want to show on her channel, because she's also already, struggling enough personally just to make that, just to attend her birthday party. And she has to put up a huge facade to come as a celebrity and to try to take over the show. I mean, it's a complex relationship between them that makes her, when she's chasing some kind of admiration from the person she will never get it from, who is the mother. I mean, it was something I think Ingmar Bergman said, that a daughter's success is a mother's misery, and the other way around. And it's something I thought about in this relationship, and it's something like, for her it was much more about always chasing satisfaction where you never get it, and never being happy with what you have, but always looking, what you won't have. I don't know if that's like, if Sylvia is required to show that part of herself to be true on social media or whatever, because I don't think it's about that. I think it's about her decision, what she wants to show and who she wants to be on social media.
I think that's interesting, because my take on that relationship with her mother, I mean, it was clearly a very strained relationship of sorts, in that, from the very first conversation, it's an apology about having hung up on her mother on the phone, right? And then she makes these overtures, and there's a lot of materiality that she takes into that relationship with her mother. But you still see this tension, between them throughout the evening. So there's this fight between love and pain between them. So it feels to me like there's a lot of unresolved issues. And part of, for me, potentially an unresolved issue is how her mother set her up for this. Because we hear how her mother has taken, as a child, her mother took her here and took her there. So she's always had to perform, go to this and go to that. So she's always been on the treadmill, and it hasn't stopped for her. And so, I am my mother's child, she is saying, and this is all you. And then now look at where it has landed me. So now I have a stalker, and you still don't see me as a human being, right? Yeah. Here's my pain, and nobody sees me. But I also find that same relationship is mirrored in how she, sitting with her friend who is telling her this very painful experience of having lost a pregnancy, and she's just like her mother.
Yeah.
Not able to connect with her friend's pain. She sits there like at a loss for words, and all she can do is like, you can try again, right? Like as if she has no, she does not feel the pain. And in the same sense that I feel, it's as though her mom doesn't see. It's not as though her mom, it is palpable that her mother does not see the pain that she's going through in terms of the price she pays for being who she is. And, her mom having put her through the hoops that it took to get her to where she is currently.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I always thought about their relationship as, like, I always thought Sylvia, when she was young or a teenager, she said, watch me getting out of this shitty part of town or this like blocks of flats, and watch me, I will become what you believe is impossible to become.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she kind of made that. And of course, but still there is no appreciation for that. And it's still more important for them is what kind of, meat is being put on the table on the birthday party. And she is not allowed to be the celebrity she has created or the success that she feels she has achieved. It's like not being, like you say, not being seen by her mother completely. But on the other hand, and it's very interesting because I haven't thought about it that way, to make the comparison to the scene when she meets the old friend with the abortion, because this to me was always. It was a situation I remembered when you get kind of emotionally hijacked by someone you think you have forgotten, but you are supposed to know. Or a friend takes you for an emotional ride you have never asked for, and then you are left with kind of shit on the table in front of you, and you don't know what to do with it.
But isn't that what friendship is about, Magnus? It is about being able to just, I can just vomit all my shit on my friend, because that's what a friend is about. A friend is that place where I can come and just be myself. Like today, it's a shitty day and it's this. I don't have to be put together, And there's a sense in which the irony is, people come to her and share their successes with her, and she's able to connect with that and celebrate that. And yet, she struggles to connect with her friend's pain.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, like in the way that she's not like, because I agree completely with you about friends. But this person is not a friend in the way that we are like close friends. But I think what's interesting is that she feels they should be close friends because Sylvia is sharing so much private stuff on her channel. So it creates a kind of illusion that since you do that with us, then I can do the same with you.
Yes.
But there's just strange many differences when it comes to a phone and in real life. And it's just a part of it, I guess, because I also feel, to me it's very strange when I follow someone on, let's say, on Instagram who invites me into their life, and I watch, let's say, 50, 60 stories every day from their lives, and I see that. When I see them in real life, it's a very strange feeling because the connection that's the same person as in my phone, and I've seen such kind of intimate, emotional stuff in the phone, and then I see that person on the street, the connection is absurd. And I wonder if it's the same person. Do I know this part of this person? Is that the same person buying milk in the store next to me? I love that. I think it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Because I think about I think as human beings, or it's something I feel strongly is I have desperate need to be in contact with people, but I'm also desperately scared of people. There's like two things fighting against each other. I'm desperate to be in touch with people, but I also don't want to be in touch with people.
So that brings me to my next question. Does social media make us as a society more connected, or does it tear us further?
I don't think there's one. I don't think there's one position on which we can stand. It does both, and it just depends on where we are situated and how we use it ourselves, because it's available for both. In that, you know, I mean, if I look at it now, more palpably in the current times where we have found ourselves under various levels of lockdown, social media has been that one place where we could find some sanity, right? If not escape, some identifying with information that could let us know what's going on when we are shut down under bunkers of sorts in all parts of the world. Social media was that one space where we could all come together while being in our own little, compartments of lockdown. But by the same token, by the very fact that it is able to connect us with people in distant places, it also becomes a platform that alienates us from the people that we are with, because you find two people sitting in the same house, in the same room, they're not talking to each other, and both of them are on these gadgets, they're sitting and they're going through social media, connecting with people all over the world, but alienated from themselves and each other in the same space. So there's that permeability, but it also has the ability to create boundaries and disconnect people as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's just that. I mean, I feel like I can be connected. I believe like the world in the phone and everything I have there. I don't like when it's not called a real world in a way. I like it because to me it's real. There's a lot of real things going on there, and it is a world, and it exists, and we can't say that it's not important. And it keeps us connected. I mean, look at this Zoom conference we're having now. This is social media, right? It has saved us in this time of pandemic. On the other hand, I feel also I'm so connected right now. Like I dream of the world in a way 500 years ago, when you had to like travel over mountains to get to a place and see something new and meet people. So I guess I feel also torn in that. I don't believe at all it's one thing. And I think, I think it's important to focus on good things in social media, and just kind of like to be able to ask yourself, what is it that is good and what can we to lift them out? Because I feel also like internet is so full of kind of hate and anonymous kind of exposure of attacks and emotions, that we need to kind of also remember what's really great and what's good there. And I think something that has like developed a lot is like sharing of emotions and some kind of emotional truth that is maybe based on feeling through the screen. For me, the most interesting is watching like viral films that are where you feel they're a bit fake, maybe made for promotion, people exposing their emotions for likes, and people doing it because they really need to.
Yeah.
And the difference is like impossible to pinpoint, but you can feel it.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting, I think.
Yeah.
Truth and authenticity is a huge role in social media, and how influencers build their following. I want to talk just a little bit about your lead actress, Magdalena Kolesnik. And I believe when she auditioned, she didn't have an Instagram profile, and today she has a huge following of over 7,000 people.
Wow.
Well, I guess she could. I mean, when she walked into the casting room, she was the first person I cast. She didn't have Instagram. She wasn't at all into social media. But so that's also it was great because it wasn't about that. It was not about, that was not, like her ability to use her phone was not what's got her job. Like her job is based on her like amazing emotional depth and her fearless kind of way of using herself and her private emotions to get into this part and to build this character. And it was a lot of fun work, because I remember her first, the way she used social media in the beginning was so much slower than it's being used. Her posts would be 40-minute long talks and monologues, And it was very interesting to slowly work up to a kind of to her hectic use, which is in the film, which became very natural for her. But it takes time, and to build a character, it takes time. It took 1.5 years of working, because it changes your head a bit. Like if you become really comfortable with using your phone and social media, just like if you start working out a lot, it also changes the way you exist. So, I mean, that's all her job. She's great at it.
Yeah, she's really taken it to heart and done her own Instagram. She's done really, really well. And oh, sorry, this page is all over. Yeah, I wanted to, and tell what the next thing I want to ask is about the loneliness for influencers. How should they deal with it? Because they're obviously looking for a connection, and they build these millions and millions of followers, but they're still not getting it. Khosi, what is there a better way? Is social media feeding a bad habit?
Sure. Again, so it does both, and I think the big thing about social media is to become a conscious consumer or user of social media, and it puts so much more responsibility in terms of recognizing the lines that you start to straddle in between those things, and it's important on some level to have some sort of, let's call it a reality check. And I'm not suggesting that this is not reality, because I think in what you're saying, Magnus, is that our world is ever expanding. So the boundaries of what we call real are ever expanding, right? So that social media is as real, although it perhaps is a new entrance to the space we call reality, because our reality has been so rigid with very clearly demarcated boundaries, right? And so now we are seeing this porosity and permeability of these boundaries, thereby we are morphing into a new sense of what is real, right? And my take on loneliness has always been, whether on social media or not, but just that loneliness is a human reality. It's one of our existential givens, right? And one of the things I always say to myself, to clients, and I've had a very lived experience of experiencing what lonely is. And until I made friends with lonely, and I could say, hey, lonely, you're here today. I feel you. You're here. Okay, welcome. Come, sit down. Let's do something. What would you like to do? And we don't make it a problem as such, right? And we make it to recognize that yesterday lonely wasn't here. And so lonely is not a permanent feature of this life, but lonely is like the weather. It'll be sunny today, tomorrow it'll change. And let it pass through. Let it pass through. But of course, that's easier said than done, because there may be a number of nuances to this loneliness. And I think each and every one of us has a responsibility to look into, to do that introspection and reflect on what this loneliness is, and the extent to which we attend to what it is calling on us, what attention of us it is calling on. The easiest thing to do would be to externalize, right? And this is where social media can become a problem, in the sense that it can give us an avenue where we can pacify ourselves through these fake friends that we don't even know, right? And it uses all these words that capture our imagination, like friends. Like, what does it mean to have someone, to have 5,000, 600,000 friends? What does that even mean, right? And so what is our definition of friends, right? And to know what belongs where. And to say you have followers, what does that actually mean, right? And what is the boundary between who you regard yourself as, the self to you, the owned self and the public self. And so there's all these nuances that get so amplified and complexified in the social media space. And I think it is so much more important to, without necessarily suggesting that you need to be wary of social media, but it is about being a conscious consumer of social media, because social media can sell us the idea that, oh, you'll never be lonely, or there's something wrong with lonely, right? In as much as I'm saying, yes, lonely, it can be a challenge. But when we put a different narrative to it, we can relate with it differently, is what I'm suggesting.
I find that in the movie, she puts out this post to say she's lonely, and then tries to deal with it. And in trying to deal with it, she attracts a stalker, and she brings her man for a one-night stand, presumably. Which doesn't go that way, but it then descended on me that the call that she put out on social media came crashing into reality, because there was so much violence in those two men coming into her life, and so those that for me is how the loneliness in the social media call became so problematic, so scary in the way that she tried to deal with it. I felt really uncomfortable with the gentleman in the house, and everything that happened that night was dreadfully uncomfortable. And so finding how to deal with loneliness in the real world can be so scary. Maybe social media is a safer world to stay in.
Yeah, but I think it's what Khosi is saying, that, I mean, her post that she makes in the beginning, it's not, I mean, it's emotionally true, but maybe not articulated in the true way. Because I think she speaks in the language of oh, I want a boyfriend, I want someone to hug me. But I don't know how much it is that she really wants exactly that, because she goes on and tries that in a way. And because she's, in a way, not honest with herself, it ends up also in a kind of a small bloodbath or in horrible situations, because she's not being completely honest with what is driving her and her motivations. But what it gets to, it gets her like really into a dark, where she needs to confront herself, or to look at what she's creating, or what she is, how do you say, kind of making happen. And it puts her in a place where I think at the end she knows very well she's very okay with who she is, and that very okay with her loneliness, and it can rather be a strength than a weakness, and that makes her like in that kind of. And I think it's a note you can hit for a minute or two at small doses at a time, and it's nothing that stays for days. You hit a high point, a note where you're just like in harmony with everything. And then you're able to be a great motivator, and you can inspire other people to because they can feel that. And that's, to me, that's where Sylvia ends up in the end. And for a moment, she's great. But of course, that will disappear. And the next day, maybe in 2 days, she will be back being unsure, doubting herself, uncertain. But that's life. But I think it's about that. It's like about also, but befriending yourself. You're befriending what you feel is maybe the negative. Like you said, befriend with lonely.
And it was beautifully shot. The way that it was focused on her eyes. It really, you felt the power at the end, and you really felt moved with her, that she's come on this journey over the last 3 days, and you're with her, and you go, this is a really authentic follower. I want to follow her now. It was a very, very beautiful and moving story.
Well, thanks for saying that, but it's. Sorry, I lost you for a moment.
Yeah.
But I understand most of it. I think with the cinematographer, it's really a kind of the connection made between the camera and Magdalena, the actress, is very much like a dance, and it also requires time to be developed. And the best thing I have is their intuition, the intuition of my cinematographer and the intuition of my actress. And I realized, like, the more they develop their characters, him as a cinematographer and what to look for, the more he gets to know Sylvia as a character during the pre-production of the film, the better it is for me to just let him roam free on this in the scene and look at her the way he feels he should look at her. And when I start telling him where to look, I start destroying the beauty of that. Just like when I start directing too much, I destroy the intuition of the actress, because because I sit and I have my own problems at the monitor, and I'm scared the film won't be good enough, or I think about something else, and it's all my neurosis and all my shortcomings. And the best thing I can do is to learn not to apply that on their work. And it's really, it's a kind of a struggle. But the most fun I've had was just letting these people kind of be free on in the scene and on stage, and not trying to control it so much, not trying to storyboard it, not trying to rehearse it a million times, and letting it become a kind of an organism of itself. And that's also, I think, when we get closer to Sylvia's eyes and why he's looking at her like that at that moment, or why the camera is, it just feels right. We spoke about the camera, that the camera should be like a Labrador, a faithful dog that will, it's always a bit too close, always too happy, very connected to her feelings, licking her face, jumping with dirty paws on her dress, that the camera should have this kind of character.
Sure. So you didn't do any storyboards for this?
No, because I'm normally the films I did before, I always storyboarded everything, and I did it really because I like it, and I still like that. But in a reaction to all the previous work in this film, I wanted to not have any storyboards, and I didn't want to know exactly how I was going to shoot things, and I wanted to be very spontaneous. Because it was for me to move out of my comfort zone, and I think like that's how that our preparation was to to try to lose control on set. Sure. And each scene was shot in one take, no matter how long it was. The whole birthday sequence at her mother's was shot in one take, from like her arriving, walking upstairs, the whole party, walking downstairs, carrying television sets. Everything was done in one take to catch, with all the actors, to kind of catch a rhythm and to have fun. And then we just said in editing, we just throw out everything we don't need, and we don't care so much what the cuts will look like. We don't care about coverage. It's extremely liberating to work like that.
It sounds a bit like theatre, in that you let the actors perform. And I believe so. Magdalena is a theatre actor.
Yeah, exactly. She is a theatre actor, and most of the. It's great to work with actors like that, because they like it, and it's so nice to throw all the equipment out of the room, or to rig the lights in a way that we can move 360 degrees or turn. For the sound engineers, it's a nightmare. It's not nice work for them, but it brings a quality, and it's a way of working, and it's a decision that needs to be made, if that's the way. I mean, for us it was a decision based on also having a small budget.
It's a very brave decision, and it's worked out beautifully as an artistic product. So thank you very much for being brave.
Thank you.
I'm just going to move over to the two questions we've got in the Q&A. And the first question is from one of our guests. Where is social media heading in this fast-moving future? Will it be an even bigger part of our lives going forward? How will people manage?
Hugh, let me, I am a self-confessed technophobic, techno-illiterate, social media phobic, and social media illiterate person. So I stand on the side and watch with trepidation, because I'm not on social media. So the most I put my foot out on social media is on WhatsApp. So And whenever I go on Facebook, I see I have like 900 requests or something like that. I just close the door and I run away. I'm like, what am I going to do with these people? What am I going to say to them? I don't know, you know. So it's just like it fills me with terror, and the idea of being followed by people just scares me. I just stick away from it. And that's the question I keep asking myself: where is this going? And at what point am I going to get into this movement? Because I feel ever so left behind. And each time I'll try it for a day, and I feel I sort of have a feeling of what's going on. But then I think, what if I press the wrong buttons and it does something that I can't reverse, and so on? So I just stay away from it. So I'm going to watch with keen interest. And I know that, for example, there was work on television that I was earmarked to host a show. But simply because I don't have a social media presence, that was taken away from me. And I'm like, okay, if that's the price. And I guess that's part of this thing about the price of being an influencer, you know. So I then perhaps it suggests that I have a choice to make about whether I jump on this bandwagon and do this for the sake of. And so the question of, what is my real self and who am I doing this for, and so on, because it just doesn't feel like me, you know, and it's a shoe I've tried to wear. It's like walking on high heels. I don't do that stuff. So it's literally asking me to walk on high heels, and I'll sit on the sides. I keep flat to the ground, and that's where I'm most comfortable. So and I'll pay the price for being flat-footed and on the ground. So I have no answer to that question. All I can say is it fills me with trepidation.
I really support, send you energy for your fight, because I think it's very important we have people who don't, after a while say, okay, I'll join. I think it's really, you have some friends who are hardcore deniers, or, you know, not jumping on that ride. And I think it's great. Yeah. But I think like how it develops and what becomes, I think the most interesting thing is like what becomes viral at what moment, and what is viral now, and the algorithm on your Instagram search button is like presenting you with maybe films or content that you like that you didn't know you like. And I think that I find that's very interesting. Like the algorithm can bring out maybe what you're ashamed of liking, or what you pretend you don't like. And I think that's it's like the algorithm, the social media is able to tell us a lot about ourselves, or a part of ourselves. And what goes viral, it's such strange things that robots can't think it up. And it makes me optimistic about the future, because what goes viral is such weird things, and they're so strange, and everything from certain dances to certain moves to, I don't know, videos that are being made. It makes me very optimistic, because it's stranger than fiction. It's too weird for a computer to even think about up in a rational way.
Okay, I'm going to go to the next question then. Sort of building on what you're saying, Magnus, is that we haven't really spoken about the scary side of what's on social media and the opinions that people throw out there. So the question is, people are human. We have a right to exist even with all our flaws. Social media has given us all a voice and a platform that was previously limited to intellectuals. Please speak a bit about this.
So, are you asking Magnus specifically?
I'll ask you.
You
go, Khosi.
Okay, so I think that there's a lot of truth to that, and I think for me that's the beauty of social media. You don't have to be a special person who is beyond the reach of anybody. I watch with amazement the fact that people in the villages, people who don't even have a so-called sophisticated education, are on all these different platforms, and people are living their lives, and it's just, people have just taken this thing and brought it into their lives, and they're working with it. They've just integrated it into their lives. So that it has flattened the world in a sense, so that it is taken away the elitism of only so and so can be seen, and we had to dress up and go to the movie house to see them or to see their lives or their documentaries. They've had this special, privilege to be on the world stage, as it were, while the rest of us must sit, fold our arms and watch them playing, So what it does is that it has opened the playing field where we all can play, and we will find different, people to play with. And so the world is open for all to do with the world what so many, different permutations of possibilities for all of us. So I totally agree with that. And of course, that comes also at a price that we need to recognize what that means also. This availability of and access of everyone to everyone and everything and anything.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge question, and I think there's so much shit and bad things and aggressions and hate flooding at times, like with all the good stuff, but like so much coming up to the surface, and I wonder if it's good that it's coming up to the surface in one way. On the other hand, it's also scary. I think about Poland, which is like, now it's a very polarized country, which is like a huge fight between people and government at the moment about abortion rights, about women's rights, and about generally church and right-wing politics versus more, I don't know, in my case, a more liberal mindset. Like in this kind of struggle and this polarization of a country, social media can become a really like scary place, and what like comes up to the surface is kind of horrible. But I prefer to know that it's there than maybe not seeing it in a way. So, but I'm not sure. Maybe if it wasn't on social media, it would have looked differently. I'm not sure. For sure, it's a vent. Yeah. And I think it has like a similar effect in so many, in different countries. It reflects the culture of what we see is like surfacing all the time.
Sure. I'll take this little gap to do a little plug. On the note of the massive protest on abortion in Poland, one of the films on our festival is called The Eighth, and it's about abortion in Ireland and how they have dealt with that situation. So do catch it as well as wait. A quick plug. The last question we have from Unkamete Nteta is, with so many kids being introduced to social media at a young age, from toddler phase in some cases, should there be a code of ethics or regulations for parents or guardians? Some might not understand the long-term impacts.
Yeah,
how do we deal with kids on social media?
I think that's such a big dilemma for what does social media mean for parenting, and because I think the one thing that the world of gadgets has done is that, these gadgets have become a transitional object. They have become the surrogate parent of children. It is the new pacifier of children, because, when babies are crying, the easiest thing to do for parents is to give them a phone. And so they have this relationship with this gadget, and they end up being so much more adept at using it than their parents. And it becomes a secondary object for them, and to try and separate them. I mean, you see now when I work in corporate training, there is clearly a difference in terms of the generation of delegates, for example. In the older generation, they are able to be fully present in the session without fiddling with their phones. Oh my goodness, try and take the younger generation away from their phones. And you kind of see that anxiety, that separation anxiety, right? Because it has just been, as I say, the transitional object, the second parent that they have always had. And therefore, the question behind that then becomes, parenting by social media. And on some level, it's understandable in the sense that many parents are, have so many demands on on them in terms of being able to provide for their families. The work has become so complicated and so demanding, and therefore children are left with these gadgets. And when the parent is there, can I just relax? They don't have time to really be there and present for their children. And so the next best thing to give is to buy children all these gadgets, right? And they become the secondary parent. And hence you see, and that sort of emptiness in terms of children being given everything that they did not even need in the first place to begin with, but because the parents felt that they needed it for themselves to be able to not have to deal with the demands of being a parent, right? So it becomes this monster that we breed in ourselves. And so the question becomes, yeah, sure, there needs to be an ethic. And one of the books I read, The Biology of Transcendence, where it talks about the fact that the danger is that you're giving these children access to gadgets and permutations in this technology that their brains have not yet fully developed to understand, to process. And so we're developing a lopsidedness where they have not fully developed the brain, and yet a demand is put on them to relate with this gadget. And it then, for me, goes back perhaps to that first question around what are we doing, like the whole question of human evolution. What are we morphing ourselves into? And in terms of saying, so what are we going to be able to create on social media? And in turn, how does it then recreate and change us? So it's quite a very difficult space. It's quite a moving space, as it were. And where do you draw the line? And of course, parenting also on many levels is something that happens within the confines of a home. And how do you police at that level? So it becomes quite difficult. And it then puts onus back on the parent in terms of what they believe and how they choose to parent their children. And of course, children get parented by different levels within the ecological system. What society says to them, what their parents say to them, and so on. So it's one to really think about, but I'm not sure it's one that we can neatly funnel into some boundaries that we can manage as a society.
I think it's funny. I mean, I have two kids. My daughter is 6, and my son is 1.5. And I think and I keep phones and tablets quite far away from them, especially from my 6-year-old. And she's not struggling so much. I feel the one who needs like a code of ethics more is me, with the amount of time I spend on my phone in front of her and where I go when I zone into my phone and what she sees at that moment and what she feels. I feel that's a bigger danger than, because she's not craving so much this phone. She doesn't have it, and she doesn't have the iPad all the time or whatever, and she's okay with that. She finds other things to do, but I know that I struggle, and I can see also. I remember growing up with my parents. We had like quite strict, table manners, like what you do at a table and what you don't do at a table. Yeah. And speaking in your phone at a table or whatever. Like they were the first people who broke whatever rules they set up in our upbringing with their mobile phones. And even today, I see that they also maybe they need more the code of ethics, and they are like 65, 66, and they struggle more than I do. I feel, and I struggle much more than my kids. But I think it's interesting. It's a broad topic.
Do you think if Sylvia had a child, she would allow the child on social media or not?
Sorry, one more time.
If Sylvia had a child, would that child be on social media, or would she take the social media away from the child, given what she's been through in this movie?
I think the question is, what would Sylvia do when she is pregnant?
Right.
Would she continue being a fitness influencer? Would she become a fit mom, or somehow use that as part of her career, or would she change? I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
My hope
Maybe
would be that she would keep the child away from social media and let the child develop their own relationship with the social media, rather than as an extension of her presence on social media. That would be my hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the advice from the experts. We've run out of time, but I just want to give you each a moment just to have some closing comments. And I'll start with you, Khosi, and then we'll end with Magnus.
Well, I think, having watched the movie and having had conversations with high school kids here in Johannesburg at a township school, I think for me, from our immediate context, and I mean my own socio-cultural context, the important thing that has come out of this movie, and it's different levels for different people at different stages in their lives. My conversation with these kids was about being aware of the influence that influencers have, but more importantly, how each one of us are influencers, and that we don't have a choice in the sense that my belief is that we are all role models, because all of us are modeling some role in society, and we are all each other's referential group. Somebody is watching us. So we don't have a choice about being role models and influencers, but it is the quality of influencer that we want to become, and that we need to be more conscious and deliberate about how we put ourselves there in those spaces, and recognize the influence that it has on us and other people. Yeah. So to be awake as we go through this journey.
I don't know what to say after that. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope others will go see Sweat. That's all I can hope for. I feel the film can speak for itself, and I put a lot of work into it, what the whole team did, and I think it says it better than I could ever do. So I just hope the film will get watched. And thank you so much,
Magnus. And I believe this is just your second feature, and both your features have been recognized by Cannes. So your career is doing really well, and we look forward to some great movies from you in future, and hope that everyone goes on the journey with you.
Thank you so much. Me too. I hope the same.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Khosi. Thank you, thank you, Magnus. It's been lovely chatting to you both. And please, everyone who's watching, please do find Sweat on the European Film Festival. Tickets are limited, so please book it now and avoid disappointment. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Great speaking to you, Khosi.
Cheers. Great meeting you too, Magnus.
Thank you. Cheers. Cheers.